Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hello, you're listening to the podcast. So there I was. This is episode number 133. Pissed off the skipper.
You know, because you could.
Doesn't everybody piss off the skipper at some point?
Absolutely. Yeah, those guys are just grouchy old bastards.
Yeah, and then you are one, and you realize, wait a minute. Anyway, what a great interview. Rob Roy.
C-2 pilot. Lots of biggest airplane on and off the aircraft carriers. Lost track of how many aircraft carriers he flew on and off of, but he's got a great YouTube channel. It is
Flybyer.
That's his new channel. Flybuyer.com is his new one, but I think it's Fly Rob Roy. I'm going to look that up as we speak a little bit here. Some fantastic video of.
I mean, he had an amazing amount of followers on that YouTube channel.
Yeah, over 100,000 followers. I mean, you know,
huge
stuff to make a small-time podcaster jealous.
Yeah, not a slacker by any means, but what a great interview. You know, he talks about how he, just how he got interested in aviation is a money story right there.
Right.
And he's young, so it really makes us feel old when you hear the story. But hey, nonetheless, a U.S. Naval Academy graduate, and then, of course, all the flight school stuff.
Absolutely.
But then, you know, his stories of the fleet, the antics.
Yeah, and including getting his parents out onto an aircraft carrier in a C-2. He didn't get to fly him. That would have been a really good way to piss off the skipper.
And by the way, this wasn't like off the East Coast, you know.
This was in
the Mediterranean. I'm not so sure.
Hey, Mom, Dad, why don't you come out and see me on the boat today?
Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Yeah.
So fantastic stuff, and they got approved because of all the work they did in supporting the cadets at the Naval Academy.
Don't run it, man.
No, but I'm just saying, you know, that's. He talked about the list and getting on the list. Not an easy list to get onto. Some are easier than others.
Fly Rob Roy at YouTube. That's what it is, right?
Yep. YouTube.com/@FlyRobRoy. One word. Yeah. So some cool videos and good stuff. Worth going to see. No new Patreon subscribers this week. Yeah, everybody, you're slacking. Go subscribe at Patreon. Sorry, that was my alter ego.
Yeah, and share the show.
Yeah, share the show. You don't have to give us money, but you do have to share the show. Tell two friends about the show right now.
It's
Go
cheap.
do it.
It's cheap. Costs nothing. Share the show.
Absolutely. And then give us a 5-star rating.
What do you say we get out of the way?
Let's do that. Yeah. I would normally say don't sit on the ejection handle, but C-2s don't have them, man. Just, all right, don't lose an engine on the cat shot.
This here is a true story.
Right?
About crossing the pond at night in the world's smallest cockpit, on the tanker, through the weather. Oh, and to the tanker crew who did that, thanks a lot. We really appreciated that. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond.
So there I was on the back of the USS Harry S. Truman, watching a bunch of Super Hornets take off, fully loaded, and in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, next to my mom and dad, who had the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to join me on a deployed U.S. aircraft carrier.
Now that's how all cool aviation tales begin. Greetings, everybody. Repeat here, coming to you from New Hampshire. I think my co-host is home this week.
Yes, I am home convalescing, and it is our distinct pleasure to welcome Rob Roy to our So There I Was podcast. Welcome, Rob Roy.
Gents, pleasure to be here. And it's so funny. I always start a story, not necessarily with a so there I was, but I'm always saying to my non-pilot friends, every great story starts with so there I was or so there we were. And they look at me like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you guys are right. But I'm glad to be with my people that finally speak that language.
We get it. That's right.
Yes.
That's why we're here.
So Rob Roy is a fellow naval aviator of the Navy flavor. And we're going to get to all of it. But can we start off with, we usually ask, how did Rob Roy get interested in flying airplanes? How did that happen?
Oh, man. It's a pretty simple answer, actually. My dad sat me down to watch Top Gun when I was 7 years old. I was born after the movie came out, full disclosure. But yeah, I vividly remember watching it. I mean, this is in the early 90s, big, giant screen, TV with 4 feet deep. He had the latest surround sound. And I just remember that movie just, rocking my world as a young kid. And it was the beginning of a long, this is obviously pre what the internet is today, and trying to figure out, how do I become Maverick? Sure. But how do I become a Navy pilot? What does that look like? Okay. You have to get commissioned. Well, how do you get commissioned? What does that mean? Oh, ROTC, OCS, Naval Academy. What are my options? And just kind of started that whole process from there. And grew up.
So you had no aviation background from your family.
Yeah, no, my dad's
all from scratch.
Yeah, truck manufacturer, and my grandfather was in the Army, and then the Air Force back around pre-Vietnam days and stuff, and then my uncle was enlisted Navy, but no real connection or ties to me whatsoever. So I basically came from a non-military background, and just fully went after it.
Well, that's awesome. I can feel every bit of your pain, because I myself came from a family with no aviation background. I had to figure all this shit out on my own, just like you did.
Right.
It was a great adventure, though, right?
Yeah, it's a good time. You learn on the fly, no pun intended. And apologies to everyone listening. I seemed to lost my voice last night, so I'm trying to get it back, but I'll try and make it a good show for you guys nonetheless.
Were you screaming at the television broadcast of the election details? No,
I was.
Or yes.
I was screaming, but no, it's just the old fashioned. Got it from my wife, and then as an adult, when you get sick, I got 3 kids under 7, and when you get sick as an adult, you really get sick as an adult. It seems.
Yeah.
You pass that shit around. It's like
exactly.
It's good stuff.
Right?
Well, so what path
little
did you?
petri dishes.
Exactly. Yeah.
So Rob Roy, what path did you take to get a commission in the Navy?
I went to the Naval Academy. I was class of 2011, the last real plebe summer.
You. Nice.
What'd you say? The last
real plebe summer. That's the good old. That's what every class says.
Okay. All right.
Are you familiar with
about that
military academy or Naval Academy or?
A little bit. Neither of us had the pleasure of going there, but we know what a plebe summer is.
You guys are so tactical with your wording. You were the smarter ones who decided to not go there. That's genius.
Neither Repeat nor I both knew both of our parents, so we couldn't get in. But that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
I was not smart enough to get in, and
I was a B+ student at best, and so I got lucky out of somehow. But yeah, so when you're a freshman at one of the military academies, well, at least at West Point and Navy, you're called a plebe. I think Air Force is too.
Right.
Nicknames for each of the different class years. And so plebe summer is basically a boot camp. It's, 8 weeks or so. And it is decently intense. It's not Marine Corps boot camp, 13, 14 weeks long and stuff, but it's the beginning of a long 4 years. And so when we say the last real plebe summer, it means hey, we were the last class that, have it tough.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I've talked to guys that they were the last class that didn't have air conditioning, in 2000. And then then they installed AC units in Bancroft Hall, the huge dormitory. And they're like, well, you guys have it easy. You have AC. Which is a real thing, in Maryland heat in the summertime. So every class, but that guy in 2000 is going to tell a war story where the guy from, Vietnam era is going to talk about a guy in the 1910s who really, they were getting smacked around the face. So that's just one of those things we say.
Well, it's funny you should bring that smacked in the face. One of our guests, who ended up retiring as a Marine Corps general, walked on to the Naval Academy the first day and said, "Hey, how you doing?" And the drill instructor punched him.
How you doing, Sarge?
Yep. Yeah, that's back when ships were wood and men were steel.
60s. That was in the early 60s.
Exactly. That's my
by
point.
the way, he hitchhiked there.
Yeah.
to start his freshman year. Oh my gosh. All right, so you graduated from the Naval Academy in, do my math, so 2015-ish?
I didn't know. 2011 I graduated. So I went there in 2007.
Class of 2011.
Yeah, class of 2011.
Okay, sorry.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
I did my math backwards.
That's all right, yeah. Like most pilots
so,
do, yeah.
Obviously, went to
Go lick that crayon off the window, Fig.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I went for... To
Absolutely,
start the whole aviation experience off?
Correct. Yeah, API in Pensacola, Aviation Pre-flight Indoctrination. So I think I got a few weeks off after graduation, went down to Pensacola and did that for, 2 or 3 months. I was in A-pool for many, many weeks kind of just waiting to go and, showing up at 6 a.m. and clean shaven and a, fresh set of khakis and just to make sure we're still alive. And did API and then finished that and then went to Corpus Christi, Texas for primary in the T-34.
Okay. Repeat.
Nice. So VT-27.
Yeah.
VT-28, actually. The other one.
Oh.
Yeah, there are two. There's 27.
There was 28. Only one when I went there. It was the Boomers.
Yeah.
27 Boomers.
No, Boomers, and we were the Rangers.
Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then from there,
that many guys through. Sweet.
You selected props, I'm assuming.
No, they actually called it jets at the time. I mean, I selected, which really is tailhook. I mean, they legit. They called it jets. I mean, so out of there had a above 50 NSS, the Navy standard score for those not familiar, and it was either got jets or tailhook in either Meridian, Mississippi, or Kingsville, Texas, and I had enough of Corpus Christi, Texas, so I didn't want to go somewhere necessarily worse, more in the middle of nowhere than Kingsville. So Mississippi's not necessarily a happening place, but I'm from Pennsylvania, so more trees and kind of greenery. And so went to Meridian and flew T-45s for a year. So and then from there, got voluntold to go E2, C2, basically. And so and then just went back to Corpus, got winged in the T-44, at VT-31, repeat, and got winged in Corpus, and then went to the RAG/FRS up at VAW 120 in Norfolk, Virginia.
Nice.
Norfolk. Okay.
And then
go ahead and repeat.
So you flew the C2 or the E2 or both?
C2 Greyhound. Nope, just the COD.
Just the COD. Okay. Well, tell people what the COD is. Sorry.
Yeah. It stands for Carrier Onboard Delivery. So it is the platform that brings all the people and supplies onto the aircraft carriers. It still is kind of sort of, but that's quickly about to phase out, as I'm sure we're going to do.
Yeah. Aren't they replacing it with the Osprey?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Have been for some years now, but that's running into all kinds of issues and not just the obvious ones, but and then the C2, here's a little fun fact. So C2s were, I think, the idea came up with them in the late 50s. First flight was 1964, I want to say. And so they flew in the 60s. My version, the ones we flew, this is in the 2015-ish era, were all built in the 80s. So they were, the design is many, many years old, but they're already 30 years old by the time I got my hands on the yoke. And then they do this thing, at least in the Navy, the term is called SLEP, S-L-E-P, Service Life Extension Program. And then, so they slept them, and then they did like a super slep. So they did a double extension, and that was 9 years ago at this point. So I think they've done it maybe a third time even. So they've kept the C2 life going just because the Osprey's having so many issues. And you guys probably know what 10, 11 months ago, they had the mandatory stand down just because of the fatalities associated with the Osprey. And so, we'll see how much longer the C2 is flying, but it's continues to be the workhorse for the Navy.
That's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
wow.
Kind of like the Harrier is still flying, though, right? That 15-year service life on that thing.
The Harrier
started in the early 80s.
Yeah. Oh, there's two.
Yeah, probably.
There's two squadrons left. Our old squadron is what is going to be the last one. I don't know.
Wow,
it's luck of the draw. I know.
And then they're obviously going F-35 Bravos. I'm assuming, right? Just to transition.
Well, some squadrons are getting the C's. Believe it or not.
Yeah, but so would a Harrier squadron go C's?
Yeah.
Interesting.
One of our squadrons, one of the Marine squadrons did C's.
Wow. Yeah, I guess that I was on the Teddy Roosevelt for my disassociated Sea tour, and there was an F-35C Marine Corps squadron on there as well. Yeah.
You know what? I just lied. 542 is not C's; it's B's. It was an F-18 squadron next door.
The next door squadron was getting the C's.
Yes, and it was a Hornet squadron before. I misspoke.
Yeah.
So you went to the RAG on the East Coast, and did you stay there for your fleet squadron?
I did. Yeah, I was in Norfolk at VW 120, and then I selected C2s out of right away as soon as we got to the RAG, and finished 120. Well, I guess we all finished it, but once I graduated 120, just stayed at literally went 3 hangars down to VRC 40, the Rawhides in Norfolk.
Oh, okay. And how long were you? How long was it before you did your first pump?
I was with the Rawhides for 3 years, and I think we did a deployment was like a year and a quarter, a year and a half in, something to that effect, at least a year before, and a little bit of workups. But in the C2 world, we don't necessarily have the workups that the jet guys do, because and here's a fun fact with the C2,
we do.
Right, exactly. I mean, we're always hitting the carrier. We're always landing on the carrier, and I don't know how many carriers I've landed on, but a bunch, like 8. And the reason for that is because, as you guys know, but maybe our listeners don't, when the ship's East Coast or West Coast, the carriers pull out. They might pull out for a week at a time or a month at a time or 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, and we still service that ship and land on it. So, we'll fly to like the Ford one day and then the Bush the other. And then, the following week it's, whatever, the Lincoln, even though I deployed with the Harry S. Truman strike group. But, we basically get our practice in just landing on any carrier that's, 20 or not 20, but like 100 miles off the coast.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't really think about that.
There's a boat going by. Go hit it.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically. I mean, because
right.
I'm not logistics expert from like a ship standpoint, but I mean, they huge warship, 5,000 people capacity, right? But, they pull out with 1,000 or 500, I don't know, but 2,000 just for a couple of weeks. They're still going to need replenishment, or a lot of times they want people to fly out to the carrier, like DVs, especially distinguished visitors. They want them to be flown out rather than just walk on. So we would always do that. Like they would literally pull out the morning of, and we would hit them in the afternoon, 50 miles off the coast or what have you.
Okay.
Just for that experience.
So name some names. Who's the most DV you flew?
Who's the biggest D of the V's you've ever hauled?
Yeah, exactly. no one that anybody would know, and I don't even remember the names. I mean, I flew some pretty high NATO people from some Eastern European countries. And we flew on, I think, the president of Djibouti. Or did he helo on? I don't know. But I mean, some of my former squadron mates flew on, celebrities and, in the cockpit with, whoever. But when I was, and we did fly, I mean, I flew on honestly a lot of just average DVs, which were great. I mean, like the teachers that got some amazing opportunity, like a program,
nice.
Or maybe like certainly like the senators and the congressmen, but maybe a local business owner. And there is such a thing as a list to get on to a DV flight. Which is one of the interesting parts about, I was saying earlier, so there I was with my parents, getting them on board. That's actually, and for my audience watching this right now live, that's the next video that's going to be released in a couple of days on my channel on Saturday morning, is the whole story of how I got my parents onto the carrier. But yeah, I wouldn't even say if you're anybody, if you can get access to this magical list, you can get on it. It's just many, many years long. And now that the
I've been on a list for a long time, but I don't think that's the right one. But okay, before you go any further, how about telling the audience where your YouTube channel is so they can go see that?
Sure. Yeah, if you go to youtube.com/@FlyRobRoy, so the @ symbol and then fly ROBROY, you can find me, or you can just go to YouTube and type in Rob Roy. Do Rob Roy Navy, because for those in the know, Rob Roy was a very famous Scotsman of the McGregor clan.
Rob Roy the Gregor.
Yeah, I'm not related, unfortunately. If any Scots watching this, I identify as Scottish, but I'm not necessarily Scottish.
There you go.
But yeah, so Rob Roy's pretty famous from many hundreds of years ago, but that is my real name and not a call sign.
Okay. That's quite the cookie duster on your logo there.
Yeah, exactly.
Put that back up for a second, Sticks. Where's that? Because we'll get that in the too.
That's an impressive mustache that you're sporting in these.
The cartoon one or the actual photo?
No,
that's very impressive. The one that
the cartoon was very impressive as well.
It was very cartoonish. Yeah, I call that mustachio. I had a guy, he does airplane drawings, and he sent that to me. And I gave him a few revisions because I was like, hey, like this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. It's just but yeah. So the mustache thing. I mean, the funny part about the mustache is that I'll be the first to admit it's not necessarily that impressive. I mean, I only had it for about 2 months on deployment. I mean, I got tired of growing it out, and so I shaved it off. But for some reason, I have thousands upon thousands of comments about my mustache. It's just because when I recorded these videos on the Truman, like November to January of this one year, I had a mustache. It just happened to be what it was rocking. And had I known it would become a thing and garner millions and millions of views, I would have absolutely capitalize on that opportunity and maybe make it part of my personality. But yeah, the reason for the mustache is, and for the non-boat people listening, carrier, pilots, when you're on deployment, you get pretty bored. Even though you're flying off the ship every day, it's still, very mundane. And one of the things that we do is we grow a deployment stash. So there's 2 times that any naval aviator really grows a mustache, at least in my experience and my training. One is when you're going to do CQ for the first time. So your first carrier qualification. And then 2 is when you're underway. Really, it's just because you're bored. And so one of the videos, I don't know, one of my recent ones, there's a guy and he's more redhead, like a reddish mustache, and his is absolutely impressive. I mean, he grew that thing for like a year plus, and by impressive I mean within the realms of Navy regulations, and like people are like, hey, like trim that mustache, don't let me see it. But I mean, it was like, for not being a black hair mustache, it was gnarly. Mine was I was just bored, and I was like, I look like a not a great personality, like hide your kids kind of guy, and so I just shaved it off. I didn't think I looked very flattering with it, but yeah, it's something we emulate, and it becomes this competition on the carrier too, like who can grow the best mustache. Of course, I just threw in the towel early.
Oh, funny! You should look like one of those guys who could just grunt hard and squeeze out a mustache and beard.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it doesn't take long, a couple of days, but yeah, now in civilian life, I'm more like rocking the beard and whatnot. But I thought about doing the mustache today, but I just can't. I think it's one thing in uniform when you're surrounded by your peers that also have a mustache in uniform. You're like, okay, there's something. But if I'm not the guy to have a mustache walking around town to Costco and whatnot. I can't look at myself.
Hey, ladies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, Rob Roy, you did one tour in the COD in your first squadron, and then and then what did that look like? Did you leave to be an instructor? Did you go to another squadron, or what?
I went after that. I only did one tour, one 6-month that turned into a 7-month that turned into an 8-month deployment, classic Navy. And that was back then. Now it's even worse. I mean, it seems like every deployment they're winning some award for longest time underway, which is not.
We'll get back when we bring you back. And
it's not an award that I want to win. After that, I really wanted jets. I mean, I when I said Maverick and Top Gun early on, I mean, I meant it. Like, I want to be a fighter pilot. And, when you graduate from the Naval Academy, you just get a pilot slot. So I was not a naval flight officer selectee. I was a pilot selectee. And as you guys know, we don't know in primary and intermediate and advanced. And then once I got voluntold to go E2, C2, that dream never died. So to answer your question, Fig, I, was flying the C2 and I kept applying to transition to Hornets. I applied I think I did fighters initially with the first 3 applications, and then maybe switched to growlers at the end because I heard that like growlers were hurting really bad and whatnot, which, very much a side note. And you talk about the best gig in the Navy. I mean, some people say that mine was, but I mean, if you want to fly jets, the growlers is the way to go because you're in Whidbey Island. It's beautiful up there. And that's where their RAG is. That's where every single squadron is, as far as I know to this day. So they're never going to, Lemoore, California. They're never going somewhere else, but they're deploying with carriers on both coasts. Anyway, so I kept applying for Hornets and didn't get it. And whether or not it's true, I believe it to be true that it's not so much that I couldn't get jets because it's not necessarily hard to do that because I was already a tailhook aviator. It's that the C2 community didn't want to let me go. And I only know one other C2 guy that got Hornets, and he applied 5 times, which is like once every year. And that's a lot because then when you get it, you actually transition. You would go back to you go back to T-45 land for a few months, and then you go to the RAG, and you're as basically an 04 select. You are starting all over, and that's really hard. So I wanted Hornets and didn't get it. And at that point, I was like, okay, well, I'm done with the Navy in my mind, but I still have many more years left in my contract. So I was I had this gig lined up in Rota, Spain. I was talking to the detailer about, and I was on the phone with the XO, and he's like, yeah, we'll take you. And detailer was like, nope. And then I was like talking to the skipper and XO of the Oregon State ROTC unit because I was like, I'm from Pennsylvania and I've been on the East Coast my whole life and want to go out west. And detailer was like, nope. And then I found out there's one American Navy guy that flies T-34s in Argentina. And it's like, you and your family can go to Argentina. And I'm fluent in Spanish. Like, I'm pretty decently fluent for.
Oh, you can't go there
not
then.
Being Latino. Well, my point, I was like, I've got like, I'll do the language school to get like, extra proficient.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, Argentina, like on the Navy's dime, flying T-34, sure. Like, I'll do that. Detailer was like, nope. And I'm talking like these PRDs lined up, like the projected rotation dates were all like right there. teacher's like, nope, Meridian or Kingsville. And I'm like, I don't want it. He's like, well, you'll get jets if you go to one of those. I'm like, you have no way to guarantee that I will get selected for Hornets, and because they're all liars. And even though like this, I mean, he was lieutenant, I was lieutenant, but like they don't care. No. So I was like, no. And he got pissed. And then he's like, okay, you have 24 hours to decide. I found a spot at the Naval Academy on staff, not teaching, just like commandant staff or Meridian. And so my wife and I, we talked about, we got married in Annapolis at the chapel. So we went to the academy and worked on staff. And so I gave up flying to go do that. Very fortuitous. We had a crazy birth experience of our firstborn son. I mean, he was medevaced to the NICU of a helicopter and, spent a week in the NICU. And so we kind of blessings that and that was at Children's National. So okay, well, had this been in Meridian, Mississippi, I don't know that it would have gone that well. So, everything happens for a reason. And then from there, I did 3 years at the academy and I had a good time, helped out with a parachute team that I was the officer representative for when I was on that as a midshipman, and did some things behind the scenes, and unfortunately gave up wearing a flight suit for 3 years, which was not fun. And then I did a dissociated sea tour in Washington State for an admiral on his staff.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
No, it's not. It sounds exciting, but yeah, he's the guy in charge. I'm just the yes, sir, man.
Well, there's that. So, oh man. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to get a little bit more into that. However, I think we should probably take just a quick moment to thank the folks over at FTIratings.com who support the show and bring these shows to you. So. Greetings to all you future airline pilots. Repeat here from So There I Was. And if you've ever aspired to pilot a commercial jet, you've got to hear about Flight Training International. Since 1993, FTI has been the front line in transforming capable military pilots into world-class commercial aviators. What sets FTI apart? Well, first off, they're simulators. We're talking full-motion FAA-certified rigs that replicate everything from an A330 to a Boeing 777. These are the same simulators used by the big names in flying, Airbus, Boeing, you name it, ensuring you train under the most realistic conditions possible. FTI's story starts with its founders, all veterans who knew the struggles of transitioning to a commercial aviation job firsthand. They experienced the inefficiencies of the traditional path and decided to forge a new one, focusing exclusively on what it takes to pilot large airliners. No more underwhelming sessions in light twins. At FTI, you train in the big leagues. Every instructor at FTI is a seasoned commercial pilot, equipped with decades of experience in both military and commercial sectors. These aren't just teachers, though. They're mentors who have navigated the very skies that you aim to conquer. They understand the complexities of modern aircraft and global routes, ensuring that you're not just certified, but truly prepared for anything the job throws your way. And there's more. FTI's training programs are meticulously crafted to accommodate your schedule. Their courses are available via an innovative iPad app, allowing you to study anytime, anywhere. Whether you're on a boat, overseas, or relaxing at home, FTI brings the classroom to you. So here's the coolest part, though. You can use your VA benefits to pay your tuition at FTI. And if you mention So There I Was when you register, you'll receive $100 off your first course. Whether you're eyeing a type rating or the ATP certificate, FTI is your gateway to the big time. Visit FTIratings.com to start your journey. Remember, that's FTIratings.com. Flight Training International, where your career ascension begins. Thank FTI. They've been a sponsor for quite a while now, and we are deeply grateful for them to keep helping us out. So a couple questions in the comments, then we'll move back on. Kind of a silly one. Ever fly in a kilt?
Man, no. Would it be maybe someday? I don't know.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, I wish I was Scottish. I mean, my brother took one of those blood tests, and supposedly there's a percentage there. But I mean, as an American, I mean, of all the other countries out there, I mean, Scottish people are like my people. Always like fighting the British. And I mean, look at our story with founding fathers. So yeah, I very much love. And I've been to Scotland. And I've been to Rob Roy's graveyard too. It says his last name was McGregor, and his tombstone. It's not really a tombstone, but the wording above it says McGregor despite them, as like a big fu to the British. So I just, I'm like, yeah, that guy. All right. Yeah.
Well, what a great segue. How did you end up with the call sign Rob Roy?
It's not. It's my real name. Yeah. No, it's my name. Yeah, that is my birth name.
So
Rob Roy?
Yeah, Rob Roy. I mean Robert Roy, but yeah. I mean yeah.
Well, that's fucking great.
Yeah, so you never had a call sign. They just called you Rob Roy.
I had a call sign, and my call sign is Potts.
All right.
Pissed off the skipper. Which is a good story. But yeah, I feel like here it comes. But yeah, but because my name is so catchy, everyone just called me Rob Roy. I mean, I remember teachers in 7th grade like, Katie, Michael, Rob Roy. And I'm like, you just call me Rob. Like, it's Rob. Like it just flows off the tongue.
Yeah. Rob Roy.
Yeah. I mean, helmet is just Rob Roy. And I earned my call sign late in my squadron days. I forget the call sign. The C2 community can be not great at assigning call signs. I don't know why. Maybe it's changed, but I mean, Hornet guys do it right. I mean, we would fly under the carrier and I would be meeting a 1-star and he'd be like, hey, whoever, right? Puddles or,
Yeah.
And he's like, don't call me, just call me Puddles. Okay. Oh, yes, sir. No, Puddles. And I'm like, well, I'm Rob. Like, I think I had a call sign. It was literally pulled out of a hat and which is stupid. That's not how you do it. Right, that's just how it was done for some reason. And me being me and a kind of a go-getter, like, I'm like, if I was the skipper, like we wouldn't do it this way. So I eventually did earn my call sign for doing something, but yeah, the C2 community is not great. Great. So many things. Call sign assigning, not so much. I don't know why that is. We have a lot of prior enlisted in our ranks. I say we. I'm not active anymore, and so to them, it's like, whatever. But like the Hornet guys, they're all about. Even the E2 squadron too. They're call sign galore. And I would say us and the Hilo guys, the Hilo bubbos, are not really great with call signs as a whole. I mean, we do get them. It's just not like there are such things like a formal events as like a call sign review board, and I never really got one. Like it wasn't a thing. But like Hornet guys, like they will go and do a dining out and have a call sign review board for the 5 new guys, and it's kind of I just love that stuff with tradition and naval aviation.
All right, so I want to. I gotta ask how did you get
Here it comes,
Potts?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, it comes with the beginning of that story. So there I was and had my parents on an aircraft carrier in the middle of the Med with a bunch of horns taken off. I mean, do we want to go into it now? Is that
sure?
I don't mess with the show for that. So I'll back it up here. Let me pull this off the wall. Actually,
all right, here it comes. Take your time.
I've got a wall here. I don't really put this in all the videos, obviously, because I'm not that guy. But this is my bail mat. Really nice from my squadron. Nice. And sometimes people sign it on the front, but when I was going through, we kind of signed it on the back. So if somebody writes something not so nice, your wife doesn't see it every time she walks by. So got a bunch of signatures on here.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And one of them from my old commanding officer, who did not give me Potts, but he was the guy. He was the skipper I pissed off. He signed on there, and this is full circle with the Naval Academy. So at this point, I'm leaving VRC 40. I already pissed off the skipper, and I'm going to the Naval Academy. And also, I pissed him off because I wanted to go Hornets. And to them, they're kind of like, if you guys, I'm not sure how they do in the Marine Corps and whatnot, but
traitor.
Exactly. Like you're kind of like, you're leaving us. And I'm like, well, the C2's sundowning. Like this is 2017. Like I don't want the Osprey because it was going to happen any year now. I'm like, I don't want the Osprey. The best maybe make 05 as a C2 pilot because it's going away. Yes. And no C2 pilots ever, usually, as far as I know, command strike groups. Like you don't really get to the admiral level in that community, even though it's the same thing as an E2. It's just you don't have that tactical experience. And so the skipper I pissed off, he signed it, hoping to get your parents a DV tour at the Naval Academy. So if you break down what that means is, if you read between the lines, the Naval Academy, as you guys know, is a national landmark. You can literally go there as anybody and with a driver's license. And it's a base, but it's not, it's more like Arlington National Cemetery kind of, so you can just walk on it. So he was being very sarcastic and pissed off, saying, hoping you get your parents a VIP tour at the Naval Academy because of me getting them on the carrier. So I will, I guess, tell you guys the story of how I got my parents onto a deployed aircraft carrier.
Yeah, I wanted to hear that. Yeah. So the question I had is, did they walk on or fly on? No,
they flew on. Yeah, nice. I all but flew them on. My officer in charge, and that is me flying on that picture of 55. That actually is me in the left seat. I was given that photo. It's not just any C2. So I'm really proud of that one. And that's the same one on my bail mat. So we deployed for 8 months. This is like month 7 of an 8-month deployment. We're coming back from the Persian Gulf and we're in the Med. I think there were 2 carriers in the Med at the time. So we were bombing ISIS, and so things were happening. I think we just stopped. And so it was a little bit of a, relaxing period, I guess, because we're on our way back home. We're in the Med for whatever reason. And this had been a workup situation for many months of, okay, so basically because I was a C2 pilot, I knew how to get people on the carriers, right? Like that's my job, is to fly them on. Now, do I, turn a wrench? No, like we're literally, the chief would be like, sir, don't touch that wrench. Like, right. So do I put the box on the plane? No, like we're not allowed to, because it's not like I'm an officer and they're not. It's like, if I do it, I'll do it the wrong way. Like, and then the air crewmen are liable. It's like, we fly the planes, maintainers maintain them, the air crewmen load the boxes. And there are people that, assign or control that list we were talking about, repeat, of who gets on the carriers. So this is very full circle from the beginning of the podcast. So in Norfolk, like when we're in home guard, we call it, that list is 2 to 3 to 4 years long, right? And my parents are nobody. They're not congressmen. They're not admirals. They're not high donors, if that's even a thing to the military. I mean, they're not even like local teachers. They're from Pennsylvania, and my dad had a 40-year truck business. But overseas, we often flew with empty seats. We would fly with like General whoever and Admiral whoever, and Sailor 1, 2, and 3, and New Marine, E2, 1, 2, and 3. And then sometimes we'd have empty seats. We could fly with up to 10,000 pounds of cargo, or 26 passengers, plus 2 aircrewmen, plus 2 pilots, so 30 souls, or a combination thereof. And so basically, I'm putting this together in my head of like, okay, how do I get my parents on the ship? And really, it backs up long before that. So back at the Naval Academy, my parents were for many years involved with the tailgating community. And so the way that tailgating works at the Naval Academy is we tailgate after the game. And the reason for that is because as midshipmen or cadets at West Point, we have to march on to the field. So you march on, you have to be there. You're in uniform, you march on to the game, right? You can't leave the stadium until like literally the last cannon goes off. And then once the game's over, then the tailgating happens. So it's very backward from every other football experience. So all the tailgating happens at night usually, or late afternoon into the evening. And if you're a plebe, you can't drink alcohol, you can't change in civilian clothes. And so my dad, he had this tailgate, and they would always, like, what music do you want to listen to? Because you can't listen to music, right? When you're a plebe, at least back in my day, they would check your computer, and the iPhone just came out. Like you literally couldn't have music on anything or videos. So it's a way to relax, right? And then as you get older, if you're like a senior at the Naval Academy, you change into your civilian clothes, you have a beer if you're over 21, and you're very respectful about it. But they threw these huge tailgates, and they became the presidents of the Southeastern Pennsylvania Parents Association. And they worked with like the New Jersey, a very good friend of mine, but he ran the New Jersey Parents Tailgate. I say that because New Jersey is a very small state, and the Southeastern Pennsylvania is not really a big region, but they threw a huge tailgate every year or every game. And I'm talking like 1,000 midshipmen out of 4,000, right? So, I mean, You're talking massive line. And this is all paid for by the parents, completely like donated their time. My dad was a truck manufacturer. He bought a truck, donated it, had it like painted up, decaled, like with Build a Go. And this is all in the video coming out soon on my channel. And so they donated, I don't know how many tens and tens of thousands of dollars and how many man hours. And my dad has 40 employees at the time. So he's giving up business and whatnot. And so they ran this tailgate. So fast forward many years, when I was on the ship flying C2s, knowing that we have seats and people fly on, I'm like, it's not just my parents. Like they actually kind of deserve this. Like they have fed more midshipmen than, and by they, like their representation of so many parents that exist out there. But it's not like I wanted mommy and daddy on the ship. It's like, 1, they're willing to travel overseas. 2, I know the guy who controls the list. 3, they actually are deserving of this opportunity. And so a couple of the people they met at the Naval Academy when I was a mid, they were 05s that became 06s. And those 06s were friends or roommates in one case with the commanding officer of my carrier, right? Like one guy was a Blue Angel with another guy, Blue Angel, and they were, he was the CAG, the commander of the air group. And then I came in from the bottom basically and can talk to the lieutenant, the ATO, the air transfer officer, who literally controlled the list. So we kind of came in from these different directions, and very long story short, got them on approval to fly into the carrier as long as they're willing to fly out on their own dime overseas. So they flew out to Greece and literally got them on whatever the Navy base or whatever the thing is we have over there. Suda, but whatever that is. And yeah, we flew them on. I wasn't allowed to fly them for obvious reasons, because this is where the story comes in.
Hey, Mom, watch this.
I did not tell my commanding officer that this was happening or this was an idea that I had. I decided that it'd be better to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission, because I knew the answer would be, I just knew it would be no. Like, no,
I fully
the
condone
rule
that.
book says I can't.
Yeah, exactly. Right. There's no rule that says you can't have your parents on. And anyway, like they were vetted. I mean, they were, full background checks. I mean, the ship was okay with it. I just didn't go through dad, basically, my boss, and really my OI, I was trying to make this happen, and I just knew because of the climate at the time that it was absolutely going to be a no. Like, it just wasn't going to happen. And I'm like, well, that's not good enough for me. So very long story short, got them onto the carrier, and they're like rubbing shoulders with Big XO. My dad's sitting in the captain's chairs, like they're hanging out with everyone. They loved it. And once people found out like who they were, I mean, there were literally guys on the flight deck, pilots, that recognized them from their tailgating days, and said, hey, I forget your name, but like, maybe you hug, you look familiar. This is like with a helmet on, with the, eye pro and goggles. And because of what they did, I mean, just they fed thousands of midshipmen. So yeah, that was the story of how I got my parents onto a carrier. And then also what pissed off the beginning of pissing off my skipper. I had 3 commanding officers. The first one that I ever had when I was a brand new lieutenant before deployment, he loved me and he was a great guy. He gave me pots after he left because I pissed off his successor, basically, is what it came down to.
Nice.
Yeah. So anyway, that's that.
That's a great call sign.
Yeah.
I like Rob Roy better, but that's
for sure. Yeah.
Indeed.
All
right.
I have to go. I got to go back before we get too far down the road, and I'll forget. And I'm already on page 2.5 of taking notes.
Well, Fig, why don't we land the plane and come back next week to it?
God, that makes me sad, but okay.
All right. Hate to do it. Hate to say goodbye to everybody. But first of all, we want to thank you for your service, Rob Roy.
Oh, thank you,
Potts.
Guys. Yeah.
Thanks, Potts.
Well, thanks for what you're doing with the podcast. I had a podcast myself for 2 years and interviewed many, many guests, and it's a lot of work. So thanks for having me on, and thanks for putting the time in on your guys'
It is a good bit of work, but it's been a hell of a lot of fun. And, we get to get all these stories out there. And that's a great one, man. Getting your parents on a carrier. I can't imagine what a thrill that must have been. So very cool.
Wait, but before we sign off, so did they didn't spend the night. They were out there for the day, and then somebody flew them back to Suda?
We flew them back. We flew 2 C2s out, and one was loaded with stuff, and the other one was loaded with all the DVs. And I was in the one loaded with cargo, and they were they were literally with the president of Georgia, the country, and all these NATO generals, and here's my mom, hey, sweetie,
I love that. Oh,
yeah.
Man, fantastic. Okay, thank you.
Fantastic.
Appreciate that.
Well, very cool. Couple other quick thank yous we need to get out there. Thank you so much to Dave Hamilton over at backbeatmedia.com. Backbeat Media Online handles our advertising. Thanks also to Dave for his other shows, all the know-how he gave us to do our show, because he has 2 other shows of his own. Make that 3. The Mac Geek Gab, the Gig Gab for musicians, and the Business Brain for entrepreneurs. So maybe one you want to listen to being an entrepreneur, Rob Roy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So let's see. Who else do we need to thank?
Well, we got to thank Styx, who's in the background right now, making all the magic happen, who's actually probably the brains of this whole damn operation. Thank you, Styx.
Yep. And if you have any questions, you may want to write to Styx at sothereiwas.us. Because if you write to Fig or repeat at sothereiwas.us, we'll forward it to him for an answer.
Right. Yeah, right. What could possibly go wrong with that?
Yeah. Thanks to Badass over at bdsaviationphotography.com.
Thanks, Badass.
And that's a couple other people we got to thank. I'm just trying to think.
That's the Dos Gringos.
That's
the 2 F-16 guys that make the Air Force sound good, letting us use their music. They were also great.
That's awesome.
Interview guests on our show.
Love that song. That was the first time I've heard that song. That was great.
Listen, they have 4 albums, Rob Roy, and there's not one bad song
way behind
on any of them.
You will love that music. Yeah. A lot of it, 98% of it's pilot oriented.
Perfect.
And they were on a couple shows with us. They lack judgment.
Yeah, usually they do. Yeah, that was one of the good title. They lack judgment.
Don't forget to go check out the cool merch at sothereiwas.us/merch. Get yourself in a bikini before next summer comes around.
I had my bikini next week earlier today, just in case you were wondering.
You know, I didn't need to know that, Fig. Thanks, ma'am. Oh, yeah. Go. So there was that US/rate. Give us a 5-star rating. Tell us how good we're doing. And if you can't give us a 5-star rating, go give someone else a bad rating. Or tell us what we're doing wrong, because we are trainable.
We're trainable. You're damn right we're trainable.
Tell us what we need to fix. So, well, in honor of not having an ejection seat handle, I don't know.
I don't know what you say.
Wear your parachute.
Don't forget to lock your harness. How's that?
Parachute.
Yeah,
We didn't get a parachute. I mean, we could go on all day. We only got parachutes when we did FCF flights, functional check flights. That was it.
That's not
Something
right.
to the effect of like, if you jump out and you leave the DVs behind, that would look really bad. But
Oh, well.
ditching 101, we practice it all the time.
Wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Till next week. Stay safe and check 6.
Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond of all the shit I was wearing on that day. Now an F-16 is cramped enough, but it's even worse with all that stuff supposed to save your life. But we knew there was no way. 'Cause when you're going down the North Atlantic, man, it's over.
Hold on. It's what?
He said it's over.
It's over.
Bugging out and going home.
And break.